What is happening, y'all? Cowboy here, and welcome to my review of Ender Magnolia Bloom in the Mist. Now, this review is based on 100% completion of the game. I've been running around the map getting basically I need to farm to get a platinum at this point. But I beat the game right around 26 hours and 15 minutes. That is with both endings. That is with the full map, all having completed areas, completed zones. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask them. But either way, in terms of the review, I'm still going to be keeping spoilers to a minimum. Obviously, you'll see various portions of the map when we're fast traveling around, but we're not going to be talking about late game bosses or story elements, or I'm going to try and keep, you know, the late game areas. I don't want to show that stuff off. But either way, let's talk about the game and my experience with it. Now, in terms of gameplay, I actually had pretty high hopes for this because I really enjoyed Ender Lilies. I think it was kind of like a breakout game. I mean, it came out of nowhere, but you know, you're basically fighting with these JoJo stands, you know, picking a bunch of different ones to give you different abilities to find a build that really fits for you, and just a really cool concept. And this definitely follows a very similar set. Instead of the knights, we now have these things called Homunculi, and we summon them on up to fight for us, as Lilac is a non-combatant. In terms of the total number, you can see there are quite a lot. In total, we do have more abilities here than we had access to in Ender Lilies, but a lot of them come quite late. In fact, the only other primary ability I had, I didn't find until I was basically done with the entire game, which was a little bit disappointing. But not really, because, I mean, the Reaper setup is pretty dope anyway. But in terms of just raw gameplay, the game definitely looks like it tries to improve on Ender Lilies in every aspect, adding even more to the combat, more flexibility. You know, we're able to use stuff like that. Like this guy can be a traversal type thing, in addition to traversal and damage. The shield guys, I wasn't that much of a fan of. These guys, shield guys were my bane, because you really need to like either just wait for them to attack or dash and immediately get a hit. Did not like those that much. But all in all, I do think that the gameplay was probably better than I'd say it was in Ender Lilies. In terms of traversal options and whatnot, there's definitely some really cool stuff here. We have like side dashes like that. We get the ability to rocket up, which let me go down lower to show this one off. And what's cool is these can be damage options as well. And then I can come slam it back down. So, you know, being able to do stuff like that, that's pretty cool. In terms of progressing through the map from a Metroidvania perspective, I really do like how the map is delineated out. And what I mean is, if you look at the bottom there, it shows incomplete zone, completed zone, incomplete area, completed area. And so Old City, Lower Sanctum, I have 100%. But everything is divided into little cubes. So like this is a little cube, this is a little cube, this big one is a cube. And so if a zone hasn't been completed, the cube is marked as gray. Once you find the piece of loot in the zone, it suddenly becomes completed. Like something like this was probably gray for a while, and then once I found this false wall right here, it would have been marked as completed. And then when I got 100%, it gets that little symbol where it says Old City, Lower Sanctum, and that indicates completed area. And so I can go here and I can kind of go around and be like, oh, you know, that's how I was able to check and see what had been completed. Was, did it have that little symbol? So I really did like that. It made the gameplay loop of going through and finding out what I was missing a lot nicer. I mean, especially think it brought back like memories of trying to get through Blasphemous 2, where I was like looking for the very last, like the last baby that I couldn't find, the little angel baby, and it was driving me absolutely bonkers. So definitely a feature that I was a big fan of. So in general, the overall gameplay, in terms of mobility, we also got like, you know, dash, jump, dash, and then we're able to do a little bit of aerial juggles. And there's even some treasures where you're going to have to do stuff like that, and even weave in abilities that will have mobility on them as well, pull stuff off, which I guess I can just put one on. But like, for example, there was one treasure in particular that drove me absolutely bonkers, and I had to do just the craziest jump possible to get over to this thing. So this is, let's see, do we have a big area here? We do. Just to give y'all an idea on what the game had me do. So starting from a wall, I had to like dash, jump, or no, I already messed it up. Hang on. So starting from a wall, I had to dash, go into an attack chain, jump, dash, go into an attack chain, and then do this ability. Doing stuff like that got me over to the treasure where I had to go. It took me forever to be like, does the game really expect me to just go through this crazy attack string? And yeah, it did. Whether that's something you enjoy or not, that's definitely going to come down to the player. There were other puzzles that I think were much more toxic than that. In fact, one that comes to mind, there was an area where I had to swim through toxic water, and I just had to beeline it through the water. There was no way to flush the toxic water. There was no way to get immunity to it. I literally had to just hold swim and swim through it at max speed, timing my heals and equipping a cheat death item so I could get to the point where I made it through the water without dying. And stuff like that, I definitely think is going to irritate a couple people. Like, I know I was just, when I encountered that, I was like, damn, is this really the expectation? Just, you know, the max pain approach? And yeah, it was. But all in all, I do think I liked the gameplay a lot. In terms of overall world design, world was pretty nice. We have a lot of different biomes going on, each with like some new enemies that are going to pop up. Probably one of the biggest things I liked was from a traversal perspective. As you gain traversal abilities like this, it really opens up how you explore certain parts of the world. And one of the best examples of that is actually over here. We'll go to the Sorcerer's Academy. This is like the second half of the game, but it's one of the first zones you can come to, so still early-ish. Well, I guess this is more mid-game, but we're just gonna, y'all ain't gonna be seeing much here. But so, for example, using that side ability, that ability will basically just jet you as fast as it can in a particular direction, but you need to have a straight shot to it, and there's certain walls that you can't break through until you gain access to that ability. You also get the ability to wall climb, as you're seeing here. But so I was missing something in this zone, could not figure out what it was, and one of the only areas I hadn't been was right up here. So what I had to do was climb up to this wall, queue this up. I'm just going to keep the map on the screen so you can see this. So we're dashing across the entire zone. We're going to go through that. We're going to transition into a new screen, transition into a new screen, transition into a new screen, and stop, and I can get my treasure. And, you know, stuff like that, when I finally discovered it, I was like, oh, you're cheeky. Because this isn't the only instance of having to do that. I just think this is, I think that's the best example of it. But stuff like that, where I'm having to utilize the entire zone and a traversal mechanic to get a treasure. Stuff like that is really, really cool in my opinion. And I think that really helps with the world design. Another thing with the world design, this ties into the audio, but each zone has its own musical theme playing. So like you can hear the theme we have in the academy, you know, and then when we're in the old city, it's a lot more like somber and more relaxed. And when we're down in, you know, something like the disposal site, you know, so I really like that, how each zone kind of has its own theme going on that's immediately going to drop and hit. I think that really adds to the world design, and the music is also pretty good, I think, in the game. So all in all, world design, really liked it. In terms of story, while we're not going into story spoilers, I will say that the game takes a Dark Souls type approach. So the majority of your story is going to be told through findings. You're just going to find messages that are going to give you hints of the story. As you progress the game, you also, like every time you get a new homunculus, you're going to get a quick little memory, and you can go back and watch these, and these will also give you little snippets, but they're more related to each individual person as opposed to the overarching story of the game. And then even when we're sitting here, when we're resting, we're able, you know, making progress, we're able to talk to our homunculi. And so the story is there, but it's not upfront, and unless you are pursuing all of these side conversations and really looking into the items and reading the notes you find and whatnot, you're not going to get much of the story other than the fact that, you know, your character has the magic ability to work with these homunculi. But I did end up enjoying the story. Ending A was actually so disappointing that I just decided I wasn't quitting until I had on 100%, and I got ending B, which I enjoyed a lot more. But overall, I enjoyed the story. I'm fine with this type of approach. Obviously, I love Souls games. I don't, you know, I like when stories are told, but I don't need them to be upfront. So I was fine with that. In terms of graphics, and we can kind of tie performance into this too. I didn't have any issues whatsoever with performance of the game, and I think the graphics look fine for what the game is trying to accomplish here. You know, it kind of has this like very artsy, almost cell shade type thing going on, the animation. But I really like this art style. You know, I play a lot of Metroidvanias. A lot of them have very different looks. And I'm okay with this. I think the biggest thing is I really like how the environments are detailed. Like, this is actually a great spot for this, but like seeing the layered environments going all the way back, and we have like the water and then the water below and then that, and seeing the layers in the environmental design is something that I think is really cool and really lends itself to this, you know, like, yeah, it's a 2D platformer, but at the end of the day, like, the environments have a lot going on, the way they have layered the environment and made the visual representation of it. And so I think they do a really good job of pulling it together. And I know we mentioned the music previously, but I do think the music just pulls everything together so much in this game that it ties into the world design and the graphical design. Like, it all very much comes together as a very complete package. In terms of audio, for the most part, audio was peak. Sound effects are very crisp. You can hear while we're in water, they're muffled. That's a nice touch. Each zone has its own music, which is cool. Occasionally, I would get like a very slight audio bug. I think I had happened like 4 or 5 times, but usually if I was pumping out, like if I was going crazy on damage and using multiple abilities all at the same time, like 4 abilities out, occasionally I would get a little like, and I think it's just the audio, like, not being able to keep up with how much shit I'm throwing out, which ironically the bosses couldn't keep up with it all either. But all in all, I'd give the audio, you know, flying colors. Audio was great here. In terms of bugs and performance, no performance issues whatsoever. I mean, with the graphics of this game, I didn't really expect any, but I had everything set up at 4K. You know, everything just cranked to high. Obviously, I'm on high-end hardware, but there was 0 performance hiccups whatsoever in this game. And there weren't any bugs that I came into contact with either. No crashes whatsoever. No weirdness where I'm like, this doesn't make sense. I will say there's going to be times where you're exploring the game and you're like, something's bugged. There's no way to go forward. Something's bugged. I promise you, it's not. I had that exact problem myself many times. In fact, there was one area where there were 3 separate hidden levers, cheeky little shits, that took me so long to find. I was like, something's wrong here. Like, there's got to be something's clearly broke. No, nothing was broke. They were just being incredibly cheeky. So it's been a lot of praise so far. You know, I mean, it sounds like one of the best games ever. And while I did really enjoy my time in Magnolia, the game does have a couple of glaring problems, in my opinion. And the first and perhaps the biggest is just in terms of the overall balance of the game. I'm going to go to a slightly later game area to really get a good representation of this. I'm trying to remember where the zone I want to show off is. No, not you. I think it's here. No? Where are they at? Where's it at? Maybe it's over there. I'm just trying to find the guys that have fire. I'm sure there's a couple over here. I'll be over here. But so when it comes to incoming damage, values are very inflated once you get out of the starter zone. Now, to be clear, the game does give you custom difficulty. It has hard, it has easy, it has normal, and you can even tweak this stuff to your heart's content. And the fragment bonuses, those don't really mean much. You can use them to get extra outfits, get art of enemies, characters, gallery information. So it's just extras that you get with those points. So it's not actually like experience or anything for your character, which is a mistake I made. But I actually started the game playing a little bit past hard to get the fragments, and then reached a point where I was like, you know, I think we're gonna turn that off and just play on regular hard. And then I reached an even further point where I was like, all right, we're going down to normal because this shit's broken. And we're talking attacks that, like, you know, that seemed okay. But let me see if I can find. Nope. See, now that, like, goddamn, 1 hit, I was like, oh, we're good. And then suddenly 2 hits, and I'm like, holy shit, I'm down to half. And I want to try and find fire guys, but in particular, damage over time effects in the game are outrageously high at times. If I can find somebody that puts a fire damage over time effect on me, you'll see what I'm talking about. But I'm talking like just massive chunks of your health just absolutely gone. Here, actually, let's go over, there's probably one in biologic research. We can go over here and find one. But it's one of those things where, you know, I had the game on normal by this point. Going over to records real fast, you can see tons of defense, tons of health. My attack's only at 200. This is very much a defensive oriented build. We have hit tons of defense with this, and you'd think like, oh dude, with that much defense, you're probably tanking everything. No, I wish I was tanking everything. In fact, quite the opposite. Most of the time I was getting my ass beat by stuff because the incoming damage values were very, very inflated in most cases. Now, like little stuff like that, that's fine. I wish I could find a, you have to go up. I'm trying to find a burn dude. Or you know what, here, I'll go to the, there's one I can get over here that should be able to show it. But like I would get afflicted by a burn attack, and then I'm suddenly losing like 10 to 15% of my health per second while on fire. And you can imagine how in a boss fight that gets detrimental really, really fast. So now we're burning. Once again, this is a mid-game area burn, and you can get this done early. You'd have to dash out, but like for a burn tick, dude, that's wild. That's an insane amount of health coming in. And it's clear from what I can tell, at least, that the burn is like HP percentage based, and it seems like there's 3 separate instances of burn. There's like early game burn, which doesn't do much, and then late game burn, which, or this is a mid game burn, but I don't remember what's at. But there's like an enemy up here. Basically, it would take me like 3 or 4 seconds before I was dead from the burn if I didn't start rapidly dashing to try and put the burn out. Besides that, there were a couple attacks that would basically wombo combo you, like you would just get instantly killed by them. And I mean, if it happened during bosses, which it did a few times, I get it. You know, the boss did a big wind up and mistimed my dodge or my parry. I got one shot. Mistakes like that happen, I get it. But there would be instances where like an enemy would do a multi-hit ability. Let me find one I can show off. There's some down here in the water area that we can talk about. But an enemy would have an ability where it does multiple attacks, and then those attacks would just, they kill you. Like they just outright kill you. So see, like these dudes are doing some serious damage, right? One of the dudes I want to talk about. Thankfully, my defense mitigates a lot of this shit now. But like these guys, the first time I encountered these, like, I mean, it still does insane damage, but when I got to this zone, I would have died long ago. That would have already killed me. And so you're in this like scenario where I'm like, okay, you know, I cannot fight this thing fair. I need to just, you know, peek and shoot and peek and shoot. And you know, I'm no stranger to you know, if the enemies are cheap, I'll be cheap. But it's definitely something that irritated me at times, and more often than I would have liked. When it came to completing zones too, you had to find hidden walls, and a couple of them were kind of inconsistent. So one of them was actually right here. There was like a little treasure here, and I like swam by it and didn't do anything. And then I came here like 2 or 3 times, and then I think what finally got it was like I swam up with the jellyfish, and that was able to pop the wall open. But previously I didn't get it open, and other times I'd be like smacking a wall and a hidden wall wouldn't open. But then when I just bumped into it, it would open. And it made getting the 100% to clear out zones a little bit of a pain in the ass. Like, because there, for this zone, for example, I literally, when I finally got it, here's exactly what I did. I cleared all the enemies, and then I just went like this with the jellyfish, just literally combing every single inch of the map, being like, I know there's something hidden here. Where is it? I'm going to cover every inch of this little cell until I know that I found it. And, you know, that's excessive, I feel. And, you know, I think that could have easily been resolved by something like, I don't know, give me a relic that when I get near enemy, or when I get near a hidden wall, the relic vibrates or something like that, you know? There's a couple different ways I think they could have approached it to make that less obnoxious. But I mean, I still went out of my way and did it. I still got the 100%. I just, you know, was grumbly for certain portions of it. But so inconsistencies with the damage, inconsistencies with clearing the map. There was another instance where, like, you know, take these dots. Those dots would have been red. Well, not these exact dots, but just pretend those dots were red for a second. Or actually, it's that little icon, this one over here, where it says locked. Like there were zones that had locked. They're marked as locked. And that usually meant that you needed a key to get into them. And then at one point I didn't know where to go on the map. I looked all over the place. I'm like, nothing's like, what the fuck? Everything's locked. I've been everywhere. My zones are being marked as completed. Like, where the hell do I go? And then I went to one of the doors on the map that was marked as locked, and suddenly there was like a dude there, and a quest went down, and parts opened up, and then I was able to proceed. But up until that point in the game, anytime I could not proceed in a direction, the map used the lock icon, and it was still using the lock icon pretty much up until I went to the door itself. And so, you know, weirdness like that, where I'm like, why is, you know, because you're enforcing players like, oh, no point going there, that's locked, and then suddenly, just kidding, it's not locked, this is where you need to go. And there were just little things like that, the damage that was incoming, trying to get some of the hidden walls. Another one that was really fucky, I had what was it at? I had this totem on, and before I had this, I had a different one that would restore just my health. Like when I was about to die, I would get full health restoration. Let me see if I still got it. Yeah, this time. Krios. Fully restores HP when the mic is below 15% of maximum HP, one time use before respites. It didn't work at all. Like, I don't know why it didn't work, so I almost considered not buying this one, but this one gave me an extra special gauge, so I was like, screw it, I guess I'll get it. And this one worked most of the time, but there were certain boss attacks where I would still just die outright, and my totem wouldn't trigger. And I don't know if that's intended, like, oh no, this is the boss's mega attack, you can't avoid that, or if it's bugged, you know? It's a case of, is it a bug or a feature? And stuff like that, I think it just pulls down the game. So while I did enjoy the game a lot, I still had a lot of fun with it, I think it's harder for me to give this more than a 4 out of 5, just because there were a lot of little instances of fuckery like that that made the playthrough more frustrating at times than I would have liked. And, you know, once again, don't get me wrong, you know, 26 hours, I 100%ed it, I did everything, I got both endings, I still enjoyed my time, but it was those little pieces of fuckery, they really stand out to me, and there's just a strong memory response to that. I'm like, I wish I didn't deal with that. That was really irritating. I would have liked this so much more if that didn't happen. Another thing, and this isn't really a complaint, but in terms of the abilities, I don't really like how the game spaces them out, you know? Like, we start with our Spirit Piercer, we get Barrage fairly early, we get Blazing Fist fairly early, we get Chain Whip fairly early, and then we get Seeker pretty early, and then the others come in significantly slower. And in particular, the other primary ability, we don't get until like near the end of the game. And at that point, it's like, well, the game's like over. Why are you suddenly get, you know, like everything on Nola has been maxed out. Like, why am I just now getting a new primary ability when I've spent all my resources maxing her out? So that felt a little weird. But, you know, thankfully I enjoyed her abilities a lot. I ended up alternating between the Scythe and the Axe quite a bit, but both of them were really solid choices. But either way, I mean, I still had a lot of fun playing it. Let's Play is 33 episodes long. So, you know, if y'all get stuck with the game, obviously I have it all covered. Not all in the 100% style, but, you know, everything does get covered. But I still had a lot of fun with it. I hope that post-launch, a lot of the things that I had complaints about could absolutely be cleaned up. You know, they could add a relic that detects walls. They could clean up wall detection to where they become visible when you're closer to it, as opposed to like having to ram your ass into the wall multiple times to get it open. They could definitely normalize the damage over time from fire to where it doesn't fill your entire health bar off if you're, because the problem is, you know, you're in a boss fight and then you're having to dodge the boss moves, but you can't because you need to spam to dodge, get the fire out, and it's a problem that just exacerbates upon itself. But a lot of these are really, they're very minor issues, but they are things that they stood out and they really stand out in my memory. But still enjoy the game a ton. I do think it is very well worth the price. Game coming in at $20, and you know, you're going to get over 25 hours of gameplay. I think even a base playthrough, if you were just kind of rushing through this, I don't think you're getting through it in less than 20. And I clocked in at 26:15. solo 100%ing the map. So either way, that is going to wrap things up for me. Definitely still a solid Metroidvania, and I think one that if you're a fan of the genre, you'll find yourself enjoying it quite a lot. So thanks for coming on by, checking it out. If you want to see more of it, I'll obviously have the Let's Play Part 1 going up by now, and I will catch you all next time with more.